Good evening, everyone. This is Akshit. I'm the web co-lead of GDSC, and I have Abhijit with me here, who's the web lead. So we'll be going over introduction to web development in this session. And here we go. Can we have the slides, please? Yeah. So, before starting this journey, I would like to say that you can just go to the comments and open the Notion document that we have provided. That contains the summary of the whole session, where you'll find useful links, and it'll help you in following the slides as well. So yeah, let's get started. So first we'll go over the theoretical part, and then we'll move on to some coding sessions as well. So let's say what's HTML. So HTML is basically the language which is used for developing any web pages. So any website you visit, the base layer for that is HTML. So it contains a tree-like structure where you can see that there's doc type HTML, which is a tag which defines the version of the HTML, and we have certain different tags as well, like HTML head, title, and body. So yeah, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, as you may all know, and we have certain markup tags in there, uh, like HTML head, title, body. So the HTML tag describes the web page. Head it basically contains the header part of all the web pages, like the title and some meta links as well, which is basically the metadata about your website. And these are some text formatting tags which is used to style your web pages, like bolding the text, strong for important text, and so on. So I'll be going over the document now. Yeah. So this is the Notion document that I was talking about, and here we have these are this is the summary of the page, and I'll go over to a code pen where I'll further explain the HTML tags. One second. Yeah. So these are the different types of tags we have in HTML. So H1 stands for the heading one, which is the largest size of the heading. So as you can see, heading one. Then we have subsequently we have it till heading six, which is the heading six is the smallest one. Then we have p tag for the para tags, and then we have div, which is basically an element which represents a box, and then we have M for emphasize, and B for bold, and mark for highlight. So as you can see that this is highlighted with this tag. So moving on to the next slide, uh, we'll go over some CSS as well now. So CSS is basically stands for cascading style sheets, and it helps you beautify your web pages. So as you can see, there's flexbox and CSS grids in the banner. So we'll be going over that further. So as I said, it basically CSS is used to give colors, margins, and position to your web page, which helps you beautify it. You can set the different types of width, height, and other things as well. So this asterisk symbol stands for all, basically. So what this does is that it'll select all the elements in a web page, and then you can style them accordingly. So this particular code script will color the like all elements will go in text color blue and have a margin of 10 px and the font Tahoma with 14 pixel size. So we have different ways of adding CSS to your index HTML file, where you have inline CSS as well, and you have style tags, and you can even link it to an external style sheet. So this external style sheet also helps you in adding some CDN links, so you can integrate certain CSS libraries as well, like Bootstrap, or if you prefer, you can use Tailwind as well. So yeah, that's about CSS, and we'll go over a CSS challenge further after I explain about some positions in CSS. Uh, can we switch to the other screen, please? So we have three different types of positions in CSS, namely app position absolute, relative, and fixed. So considering that we have this container, so I'll just style this container uh, as background red for now, and I'll give it a height of 100 px and a width of 200, so let's say. So what position absolute does is, if I'm giving position absolute to box 1, so what will happen is that it will float in the region. So you'll have to check the parent of it. So if I'll give the same styling to the box 1 as well, and I'll give it a different color. And let's increase the height on this as well. So what will happen is that you have to check the parent element to which you give the position absolute. So say I give the position absolute to this element. So you have to check the parent. So if you check the parent, the container does not have any position on it. So what will happen is that you have to see the parent of that then. So if I give a bottom 0, then it gets relative to the body of the page because no position has been given to the container. And if I give a position absolute to the container as well, then it will be relative to the parent. See, so it's relative to the parent now. Now, if I say position relative rather than absolute, what happens is that the position in which it is supposed to be, it moves ahead from that. So if I say bottom 100 px, then it will move 100 px above the position of where it is supposed to be. Similarly, if I do top 100 px, then it will move 100 px from the top. So position relative is basically given to move it relative to the position it is supposed to be. So I'll just copy this code and uh, give a new file so that you can further access it if you want. I'll say position relative. So this is how position relative works. And if I say position fixed is basically, it's always relative to the body. So if you want to say left 0, or I'll say right 0, then it will stick to the right of the web page. And similarly, I can give it different bottom values, top values as well. Yeah. So using these position absolute, fixed, and relative, you can basically align items in different ways. So let's say if you have, let's go ahead with the challenge now. So this is a challenge where you have to create a box which is of red color, and then you have certain smaller boxes, and you have to align them in this diagonal pattern. So the way to do this, we'll use position absolute and relative for this, but there are different ways to do this as well. So you can either use flexbox or grid as well. So let's go ahead and do it with position absolute first. So what we'll do is that we'll remove the CSS for this for now. And let's see, it says 300 px and 300 px. So I'll give 300 px of height and width to both of these, height and width. Yeah. And then we have three boxes, which are box 1, 2, and 3. And we have these height width as 100 px as well. So let's say 100. And in case you're wondering that how do I know all these, you can always just visit W3 schools, and you have certain materials here. So you can just look them up. Even I don't remember all of these. Whenever you have a use case, you can just go ahead and search for it, and you'll find a way. So I have even included it in the useful resources. So for HTML and CSS, I prefer to use W3 schools, and for JavaScript, MD and Docs are best, which Abhijit will explain further later. So let's come back to this. We have the first one is yellow, green, and blue, right? So let's make this one yellow, and the last one blue. So we have these colored, and now what we have to do is that assign them diagonally. So what we'll do is that we'll give position absolute to this element. So what it did is that it floated the three boxes to the top of the page because we have done absolute. So what the absolute does is that it takes your element out of the flow of the page. So it took it out of the flow, and now they are overlapped with each other. So to align them according to this pattern, what we'll do is that first we'll take this blue one and give it bottom 0 and right 0, because we want to position it at the corner of the page. So I'll say bottom 0 and I'll say right 0. Yeah. So it went to the document. It's relative to the document right now because I didn't specify any position on the container. So now you know why position absolute acts weird whenever you don't give a position to its container or parent. So I'll say position absolute, or rather you can say position relative. People try to use position relative more for the parent if you want to align the child in a haphazard manner. So because position, if you don't specify any top, bottom, right position to it, then what will happen is that the relative won't affect it. So the best way to do it is that you give the parent the position relative, and then you can give the child elements position absolute, and then you can just place them according to its parent. So now we have the blue on the corner, and now we need to center the other box from, relative to this red box. So as we can see, the green box is in the center. So there are two ways of doing this. First, I'll show you the way of using position absolute only. Like if I say left 50% and I say top 50%. One second, I entered it in the wrong way. There you go. So right now it's from the top it's 50%, and from the left as well it's 50%, but it's still not dead centered. That's because the square has some height and width. So we just have to move it back 50%, 50% of the small square. So what we'll do is that we can just transform this, transform translate, and we can just say minus 50% on the x-axis and minus 50% on the y-axis, and it will just center it. That's one way of doing it. Then if you wanted to do it in another way using grid, what you could have done is that I'll just comment this code out. and you could have just said display grid and place item center. This is a neat little trick to assign any element to the dead center vertically and as well as horizontally. So as you can see, the both the elements, the box 1 and box 2, got centered aligned. So you could just give the first box top 0 and the second box left 0. So that would just place it there. And if you want to see this in action again, then if you wanted to center the number relative to the box, both horizontally and vertically, you could just copy this and put it in this, and this would just give you the dead center of the box. So this is how beautiful CSS is, and this is just these are just two ways of how I did it. You could even do it using grids, which I won't go into right now because we have a time crunch. But you could even like create 3 columns and do it using grids. That could be one solution. Feel free to do it. You can just go ahead and fork this and play with it, and that will help you a lot. Like over here also, rather than using grid, I could have used flexbox, and I could just make this align items and justify content center. That would have worked as well. So it's just a matter of playing with it and just looking up the documentation and just playing with it. That's all. So if you have like any doubts, you can go ahead and ask it in the chat. Okay. Can we move on to the slides, please? Yeah. So that's all I have for HTML and CSS. Now Abhijit Jeet will continue with JavaScript.
Thank you. Just I'll share my screen and hope I'm audible. Okay. Is my screen visible? Hello.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay, so just a sec. Okay, so getting started with JavaScript. So before moving on to JavaScript, let's see what is ECMAScript, which is highly used term in the current time. So ECMAScript is a standard for scripting languages under which JavaScript, JScript, and another such scripting languages come under. So you can say that it is a standardization for scripting languages like JavaScript. I guess the screen is not shared yet. Like, can you switch the screen? CSS one is visible.
It's visible. Abhijit, it's visible.
Okay. So now moving on to next thing, that is the data types in JavaScript. So firstly, JavaScript has dynamic types. So this means that same variable can be assigned to use different type of data types, but what you can do is the JavaScript compiler automatically assigns the data type to them. So you just use let, var, or const to declare the variables, which we'll move ahead and see the difference between them. So there are usually 6 types of data types in JavaScript that are namely string, numbers, booleans, arrays, objects, and one is undefined, in which we'll get in detail. Now for strings, unlike other languages, it works in both ways, like double quotes, single quotes, etc. And you can even nest them inside each other, as you can see in example 4 and example 1. Then we have numbers. It is a common numbers and there is no float and double. They're all considered as single one. Boolean, we all know it's true and false. Then we have an array. Now, array in JavaScript is similar to that of a list in Python. Like it can hold multiple data types and similar also. Like in the second example, you can see there are strings, numbers, even objects inside there. And you can even place functions inside it because functions are also objects in JavaScript. That's something new. Next, we have objects, which are, you can say, comparable to dictionary, which have key value pairs. Now the keys are strings, but the values can be anything. Now, lastly, we have undefined. So when we have undefined, then what happens? Assuming you have declared a variable, let A, assuming, right? So once we have declared it, we haven't provided any value yet. So it has a garbage value, in which in JavaScript provides the undefined. So if you try using it at this moment of time, it will give you undefined. So now whether you have directly explained it, let's see in the demo section. Hmm, JavaScript data types. Let me share another screen. Windows, stream, brief tab. Just a sec. Where the hell is this? In the console log, let me bring it up more. There is 1 to 3 into 10 to power 5. Like us can do also negative ones. So let the screen update. Then we have assigned a list. Now, assuming we can put another value in it, that is a string. Right. So let's see what happens now. You can see a 0.012345, and here a string is also there inside of it. Now, what else can we do? Let's add a object in there. So assuming A is equal to 32. So then we have a string here, and you can see the object is also added inside of it. So the list is quite a good feature in JavaScript and can hold many different things. Now, what if we do let B and console dot log B. So just a sec. Updation error. Okay, so what the hell happened? Is it throwing an error? Now this is what you call undefined. Like I have declared B but haven't provided it a value yet. Now if I provide a value here, B is equal to 32, assuming semicolons, and then again do this console.log, then we'll get a value of it. See, 32 here. This is what the difference is makes undefined, because assuming you have some data in it, like we are using have an API, etc. and stuff. So assuming there's no data here and you try to access it, then undefined is what you can use as null and check whether and apply a what you call error handling situation there. So that covers, I guess, most of the data types, as there are many data type left. Oh, okay. Let's create an object also. Let obj. Uh, Aditya Kumar is asking, is session being recorded? It will be on YouTube, so I guess yes, you can say that. Key one is equal to, let's say it's Aditya ask a question, so let's put it Aditya there. And key two is equal to 12. console dot log obj. So you can see the object here, that is key 1 Aditya 12. Now as I explained that keys are of string, so that is what is happening here. Now another thing is that, like, I thought I will explain later, but you can also use the same JavaScript codes inside the script tag as when told by Akshit earlier. So assuming I have put these all things here, let me tab it out and let me comment it for you. Cool. And identifier A has already been defined. Just a sec. Huh. So this is all what are data types in Java, JavaScript. Sorry. So let me again go to the slides once more. So now we have seen what are data types. Now how we declare variables in JavaScript. Now for declaring variables in JavaScript, there are three things, or you can say three keywords that are you mostly use, that are var, let, and const. Now let has been introduced in year 6. Now why the hell would they introduce a new keyword to declare variables when var was already there? There might be some differences, right? So we'll compare that of a var keyword is global or the function scope. Now let has been introduced in year 6. Now function scope means assuming there is a function like function A, and inside it is function B, right? If you declare function A inside of there's a function A, then we have an if else condition. Like we'll see the code also, but try to imagine it. But though outside the if else, it will also be accessible. Now let doesn't allow that. Let is like a normal local variable, which the scope of which is limited to a block only. Similarly is const. Now it can var keywords can be updated and redeclared in the scope, like as I was doing earlier. But but the let doesn't allows us to redeclare it into the scope. Like assuming we have already declared let A, so it won't allow us to declare a let A again. But in var you can do this. And for const you can neither update it nor redeclare it into the scope. You can update the value of the const, but you cannot redefine it. Just a sec. Okay, so before moving on to functions, I'll again switch to switch screens. So give me a moment. Okay, just a sec. Hmm. Let me come out of this. Hope I saved it. By the way, the link of this collection is already provided in the Notion, which Akshit mentioned earlier. So let's first see what var does. So assuming if true, right, and since here we haven't declared a function, let's do that too, though even though that's a separate topic of ours, but still. Function demo. No. Right. So if true, var a is equal to 32. Great. So we have declared a var inside the block, right? Actually, we'll say inside the function, but still. So let's console.log here. Okay, great. So let me open the console first. Okay. Okay, well, it is not. Now, if again, now you can see the 32 is being printed. Great. So if I were to call this outside the if condition, it should give an error, right? So let's try it out. Comma outside. So let's see. As you can see, the variable 32 is accessible both inside the function, inside the if condition, and outside the if condition, outside the condition as well. Now, it was declared between the what you call block of var in the if condition. So why it is accessible outside? So as I mentioned earlier, like var uses a function as its scope. So this whole demo function can access the var once it is declared anywhere. It doesn't matter. But whole demo function, the var can be accessible. And also we can do is var a is equal to 34, and it will change the value. See, we have a var declared inside, we have var declared outside, but it doesn't matter. Now, assuming we had did this with let. Now, just since we are doing this, let's do another thing. Var is equal to 34 here. Now, what will be the outputs? If you want to try, you can try it down in the chats, like what you think will be the output of it, like error, or will the value be updated? Well, you can see that the value can be updated. Even though there are two A's defined inside it, it doesn't give an error. Now, this causes ambiguity when you are doing actual programming. That's for this whole reason let one introduce. Now, let's use let A right here. So since we have used let A, you can see identifier A has already been declared. It doesn't allow redeclaration of A variables inside the block at least. Also, A won't be accessible outside the block. Like it is declared between the if block. So A is not defined, but you can see outside. Now, but we can declare another A outside the block and it won't affect the inside one. Okay, let's load. You now can see, right? This is the let reduces the ambiguity and limits the what you call scope of the variable inside the block in which it is declared. Now it is all great and stuff. Now what does const done this? Since as you can see, as the name suggests, const, you will guess it will be doing something like final keyword, like it won't change allow the changes in variable, declare a constant stuff, right? But here's a slight twist. Just a sec. It now it doesn't. It does allow changing of values actually. Let's see how what I'm talking about. So let a1 is equal to 5, right? So console.log, and by the way, console.log is like print statement for JavaScript. So comma changed. So as you can see, the variable value can be changed. Now changing elements of A are two different topics, because here we are just changing. Okay, just a sec. Changing inner values, whereas here 3 comma 4 comma 5 the declaration of A isn't allowed because assignment to a constant variable. So the main we can conclude is const allows updation inside it but doesn't allow redeclaration of that variable. So this is the major difference between var, let, and const in JavaScript. So again, going back to the slides. Next, function declaration in JavaScript. Now, functions in JavaScript can be declared in two ways. Firstly, what you can use is function keyword. Give the name of the keyword, the name of the function that you want to give, and provide the way of parameters and inside the code that you want to execute, similar to other functions. Now, another way that a JavaScript provides is you can assign a function to a variable and call by the variable name. And as you can see in the example below, let x is equal to my function 4 comma 3. Now here we are calling the function, and then we have my function that is a comma b and returning a minus b, right? So this way here we are using way one of declaration. Is the screen visible, or should I present it to zoom it out? Also, does anybody have a doubt till here? Undeclared variable. Stream is lagging. What is undeclared variable? So undeclared variable. You mean undefined, right? So just a sec. So what happens is, when you have a variable, you haven't assigned it a value, it stores garbage value, and that garbage value is called undefined. But in JavaScript, most data types are objects. So JavaScript, uh, the garbage value. Hope this answers your question. So moving on to the function part. So this create function. Oh, another thing. Now there's another feature provided in ES6, which is called arrow functions, in which you do not have to use the function keyword. So you use let data. Data is like variable in which the return value is stored. Then you provide the parameters, use the arrow sign, and code to execute. Now, as shown in the example, return p1 plus p2. Now, this is what we learned in the earlier slide to declare a function. Now, the equivalent of it can be let add is equal to p1 p2, and you can put the arrow symbol uh, and provide the return p1 plus p2, and the call for both it remains the same. Now let's see again, just a sec. Let me save it first. Lagging a lot. Okay, just a sec. Okay. Way one function, way one add. So num1 comma num2, num2 sorry, return num1 plus num2. Right. So another way was let way to add function. Sorry, let way to add function num1 comma num2 return num1 plus num2, and lastly we have the arrow function. Let arrow is equal to num1 comma num2 return num1 plus num2. So let's call each of them once. So it will return a value, rather we should do console.log, like returning will cause an issue. Console dot log num1 plus num2 here, and here what we can do is arrow 4 comma 5, then way1 add I do console.log here? 2. Should I in the console first? Oh, okay, not a number. Now why the hell it is a return from one common number? This makes clear stuff. Nice. Didn't use the brackets, though it isn't necessary, but still. Huh. So v1 dot add 4 comma 5, and lastly we have v2 add 4 comma 5. So narrow. So, so it should work now. I guess save. Yep. Console dot log arrow. As you can see, there are 3 ways to add the function, and all of them print 9. Right. This function is especially used when used to define very small functions that you want to do, and just have a quite bit of parameters, and it is used mainly in the array functions that we'll discuss ahead, like map, reduce, filter, etc., which are used to perform operations on all array elements using few lines of code. So this is way one add, in which we declare the normal function and the function name. In this, we add the function to an object, function to an variable, and lastly the arrow functions. Next we have is the array functions which we discussed. Now, array has tons of elements. So usually, typically, what we do, we use a for loop, and if we want to apply a function, assuming we have numbers and we want to multiply it by 10, right? So what do we do usually? Like apply a for loop, go ahead, using the index values, change the function as store it, right? Well, JavaScript has an inbuilt function, what you call is dot map, to apply a particular function to all array elements in one. It creates a new array firstly, so return type is array or list, what we call, and that does not change the original array. And for each element, the function that you will provide as a parameter runs once. So the syntax of it is, firstly it takes the array, applies the map function, and the current value index are optional thing, but the ARR, or what you call our array element that we have, is a constant thing. So example we have is let ARR is equal to 65, 72, and 30, right? And then we do is map and num. So what does num is, each time it takes a different value and stores num into 10. So the output of it will be 65, 650, 720, and 300. If you want to try or you want to see a demo of it, we can do it at the last, once we discussed all of the functions above. Next, so map, what it does is it applies a particular function to all of it to change the values. So as the name suggests, filter is used to filter the elements that specify a particular function, like assuming is even, basic is even, or is odd, is prime, like whatever function you can do. Just provide a function that returns a bool result. In the function, you can write the code for prime numbers, etc., what you want to check, and just pass it to the filter function. And it has the same syntax as that of map, just the function return type just changes. So like here you can see a true false value is being returned, and all the values that satisfy the conditions are stored in the new list. Like here you can see the function is num mod 2 is equal to 0. That is the condition for even, right? So 65 is even, no. 75 is even, so yes, added to list. 30 is even, added to list. So our last result is 72 and 30. We'll try it out and show how it does actually. Lastly, we have is reduce. How many times have we used to calculate sum of an array? I guess most of the times we need it in particular programming question, like you have it solved. So what this function is used is to get a consolidated result of all array elements. Now consolidated is result doesn't mean only addition or only subtraction, only something multiplication, etc. Same as above, it gives a consolidated result and has the same function, same syntax as that of previous, just a small addition. it now takes a current index or what you call the current value as well, because current, assuming you have a sum, right? Like here you can see 65.1. So what we do is mat.round the particular value and then add it to the sum. Great. See, so it takes 65.1, round it off, it becomes 65, it adds 65. Then it takes 72.9, it becomes 73 and adds to the previous one, that is 65. And then again, so on, giving the consolidated result of 169. Instead, you could do multiply and the result will change, just a small symbol here. So now we have seen the three functions. Now, rather than explaining it with let's see with the emojis what the three functions are different. So assuming we have a cow, a corn, a hen, and a popcorn, right? And we cook it. So each of them gives a different results. That is, the each of the elements are modified. Like cow becomes a burger, and then if potato becomes French fries, and so on. Now, in filter, what we do is we take the assuming we take the foods and we apply the function that is vegetarian or not. So in the given, as you can see in the picture, like let me what do you call big zoom it once. So as you can see in the picture, what do you call the burger has what you call ham in it, so it's non-vegetarian, so it is excluded. Then we have the French fries, so is vegetarian potato, so it's stored in the list. Similarly for popcorn and chicken. Now reduce. This is a bit weird, but okay. So what you can do is you eat all of these. So eat is a function here, and these are the array elements. And then all of them gives the consolidated result, as you can see in the picture. That's the difference between map, filter, and reduce. Map changes the values of the element, all values. Filter filters the filter, what you call, only stores that part of the array that satisfy the particular condition, and reduce gives a consolidated result for each of the elements. Lastly, the most important part where all this converges is the document object manipulation. What you got? There is HTML, as Akshat explained earlier. The HTML script is a document object model here. Like we can take the HTML scripts and calculate, extract the different HTML elements and change it in the real time using JavaScript. Like using HTML, CSS, yes, you can create a static website, but what you do with the static website? Like you want to take input and send it to the backend. How would you do that? That's how this works. So firstly, for that, we'll need to add a JavaScript file to the HTML script, right? So script tag is used to do this. Either you can do is write the whole code in the script tag of it and call the functions in the JavaScript. Call the functions that you wrote in the script in the HTML tags. Like what you call it usually happens is like you have a button tag, and on click is a event listener, which we'll discuss ahead. When you click a button, the function is invoked in the from the JavaScript code, and the corresponding features take place. Else, what you can do is write the script tag, use src, and provide the index.js. Index.js is the file name of the JavaScript that you want to link. So this is a bit weirder, but still. So the main keyword that we use to get the HTML doc, or what you call object, you can say, is query selector, right? And you can provide the tag in it if you want a particular tag, but usually this gets a bit vague. Like assuming if you get all, assuming you selected like p as even given here, all the p tags in the HTML file will get stored in the get element in a list format, but we don't want that. So alternative to that is we can use a class name, right? Class name is a bit more specific. So in query selector, we can provide dot and the class name. So then it only selects the particular elements, or you can say the scripts, which have similar class as mentioned here. And lastly, we have ID selector. That is the most specific. Like in CSS, what happens is that there are hierarchy, like in which the object is identified. The most priority is given to ID, like it's unique, and the second is the class. only a particular stack can have that. Then we have class that a particular set of elements can have, and then we have the generic, that is the tag name. In that order, it is written in reverse order. So hope you can understand. Like we'll see a demo of it. If you can't understand, it's perfectly fine. Now, great. Now we have accessed the doc object, like the script, HTML script that we wanted. Now, what we can do with it? Like we can get the inner HTML of it. We can change the inner HTML of it. So for that, what you can get is get element, like assuming the element that we have, we take the element and dot inner dot HTML. So anything between those tags is get stored in the content part, and you can change it also later. So before moving on to that, let's see with example like what I've been rambling about for such a past few 5 minutes. So let's take another code pen, take a random script. So assuming p tag for it, like so p not changed, right? And then we can do is let change document dot query selector um, and console dot log is equal to chnge and then chnge dot inner html. So let's see console log what it is printing first. Why it's giving an error. Document p is not a valid selector. Okay, now what am I missing here? Update. Hmm. Not changed. So the value of it is being passed here. Now assuming we want to change it, right? So chnge dot inner html equal to changed, and let's copy it again. Right. So as you can see in the below, firstly it's not changed, then it's changing to changed. If I remove it, it again goes back to non-change, not changed. Like let me do it. What you call is style. Also, you can what you can as Akshay told earlier, you can define to 30 pixels. Zoom. Now it is not changed. Now, assuming when we should uncomment the inner HTML dot changed, it should change to something else, right? Let's see it out. It changes to change, right? Now there's a catch here. It like in HTML, it isn't specified that you can only provide sentences. Like you can provide another tags too. So let's assuming I provide another p tag that has a style of that it is happening. Okay. So style, assuming let's have a color red, right? And now we say changed inside here, chnged to red. Now let's see what happens. Okay, like why it is not changing. Invalid token. Okay, I did something that I shouldn't like something like it or not. Change to red. Like why it is not happening? Invalid and unexpected token. Not change font size. Oh, p dot style. P which kind of p right? Huh. Now, now that we have seen the change and provided HTML2, now let's make it a bit more specific and try using class. Like we have two p tags now, right? P tag 2. Let's get way to render here. So great. So I applied a class bigger, right? So dot class, what do you call it? Class is equal to big. So when we do dot bigger and font size, it's the same as Akshit explained, and just reusing that. What do you call why it's not rendering? Class is equal to p tag 2 class equals smaller. So both are rendered, and let's change the color of it. The internet is damn slow. Render. Wait. Else, am I audible or not first? Hmm.
Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience. I think Abhijit's net is not so good right now.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, hi, Abhijit, you're back.
Yep. Where did I lose connection? I don't remember.
You were doing the code sandbox thing.
Okay. So, assuming I was here, right? So why the hell it is not rendering? So let's let it wait for now. From dot p to dot bigger. For that, we need to find a
Uh,
particular class. What?
your screen, yeah, now it's visible. Okay.
Okay. So we are using dot bigger here because classes in CSS are referred using dot, whereas IDs, like assuming we provide an ID to it, ID is equal to tail for now. Let's see it. So hashtag a Is not CSS not linking here or something or no? Blue. Right. So as you can see, now we want particular bigger one to change. So what we do is we write something in a HTML render, like why the internet is damn slow. And you can see that it is changed. Right. Now also, like if we want to change for different one, like we want to change something, we just use hash and the ID name renders, and now element being changed, we should see that will render quickly. Come on. Okay. There. So let's save the just a minute. And saved, but not rendered yet. Just a sec. Let me change format CSS. As you can see, the blue one that it is rendered, now it is being changed to something that we wrote here. We can write anything like here, like ID1, ID changed, etc., like whatever you like. Now why this is useful? Like usually form data changes, right? When you enter the thing in the form, like you enter your password, like it's starting, it's empty, then it becomes, you type assuming your name, so your name gets stored in it. So that is how it being used and changed. So that now that we have rendered, now let's go back and see the setting up listeners. Now what listeners are usually do is you do some activity on your browser, like you either you click, either you zoom, anything, like any changes that you make to the browser window is comes under action monitor actions, right? And to change the what you call the HTML script as per your actions, there are something called that keep track of these events and fire a function when the particular event is occurred. Like assume syntax for it is take the element that you want to change, what you want to monitor actually, and add event listener to it. Now in the event part goes an object, like event can be anything like a mouse click, mouse zoom, a button click even. Like have you ever noticed, like you all must have a VTop, right? Try entering the password and just press enter. How does it knows that you are trying to click the sign in button or the submit button? This is what event listeners look like. They apply what you call an event listener to monitor the enter button click, and you can apply click for each and every button of it. And then they have a function which is used for signing functions, and it is being fired. In the example, as you can see that I have used for resize, you can use for click as well. Like, should I? So the next part is promises. The most typical part of the presentation will be this. Now, a promise in JavaScript is an object that represents an eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation. Now, to better understand this, let's go back to school days. So, assuming learn.js is the main action that you want to perform is to go to school, right? Now, the learn.js is something your promise object. Assuming you got up, unless you get up, there's nothing happening. You won't go to school at all. Assuming you get up, now you have a set of tasks that you want to do: brush, take a bath, wear clothes, and do breakfast. Now, breakfast is something you can do in any of them between, but the last two tasks, that is actually go to school and wear clothes, are linked. Like without clothes, you cannot go to school, obviously. So that what it is. Like once you get up, now you another example what you can see is assuming your mom sends you to buy veggies, right? She is making any of your favorite dishes and she asks you to go buy veggies. Now here two situations can happen. Either you can find that vegetable in the market or not. If you find it, you notify it to your mom that I found it, I'm coming back with it. Like that's the then part. Assuming you didn't find the vegetable, right? So you'll say, Mom, I didn't find the vegetable, we'll need to make something else. So that goes to the catch part or what. And then we have a finally, which runs no matter what. Like you will come back to home. You won't stay in the market forever and wait for the veggie to come back, right? So assuming your then part to be your successfully finding the vegetable and catch part to be not finding the vegetable and finally returning back to home is somewhat you can relate the promises to. Now, promises are used for, now you can assume it to be an API call, right? You fetch call an API. Now, API gets called, the data is being returned by the server and come back to your HTML script. Great. But calling this data has tons of things that are required, like the internet speed. Like I have my slow internet speed by which the data is lagging, right? So if the time varies, how long the data will come back. But till then, you cannot hold your browser in between, right? Else, if your screen is stuck, the user of the website won't be stay there. So what happens is actually the promises keeps running on a background, and that forward code gets starts executing. And once we get an acknowledgement from the server or the data come back or whatever happens, either what we can have, either data will come or either data will not come. If data comes, then we go to the then part, right? And execute that we have successfully found the data and whatever we need to do, we'll do with it. If we didn't find or some error is returned by the API call, like then we go to the catch and provide a reason that for this reason I cannot execute ahead. Your promise has failed. And lastly, I have finally. Finally is usually not typically used, but still, it is like to print back the reason why didn't this happen and what to do ahead. Similar to a promise, like either the promise you can fulfill a promise or fail a promise. Similar to that happens. Now, assuming a promise object you have received, right? So you can have initial task, two success tasks, you can have multiple, and then a failure task. I, I'll prefer to not look at the test and look at the image more, like it will explain more. So if the initial task succeeds, then we go to the then part. That is our first success task, right? Now the tasks can also fail. That's also a point we can do. So if any at any point we find that anything is failing, we go to the failure task or dot catch part. As you can see, the red lines below that are showing. But if they are successfully executing, we go step by step. Like initial step, then we go to success task 1 and wait for it to successfully complete. We cannot skip it and directly go to success task 2. Once the success task once is completed, and then it goes to next, and once it's done, then it comes out of the function. Now this is what object, how it works. If you don't understand completely, it's completely fine. You'll get hang of it once you start doing the API stuff, because it's related to that, and asynchronous is somewhat related to multi-threading. Now finally, the most ramble is because of this, that promises are required because of just because of API calls, because you just showing a static website isn't the norm anymore. People are expecting more from the websites every day. Like recently I came across web3.js, like which it does is it renders 3D stuff, like so, and for that API calls are must. So that's what it is. And the JavaScript provides a better function, that is fetch function. So fetch function is quite similar and it works similar to a promise. So in fetch, you provide the URL which you want to fetch, right? And then in the then part, you provide response, the response that will be returned by the server. and you handle the response like whatever you want to do. You can convert it to JSON, TXT, render if the HTML file is written. Else you catch it and return error in case URL returns error. So now example. If some of you must have done the team selection task, this is what the exact API was in there. So what we do is fetch the API, and then the response we convert it to response.json, because response contains tons of things, like from where it is coming, like which server it is came from, what is the data type, how much the file type. That's actual, and then the actual data. It is all part of the response part. But the most part that we require is the data part. So we need to convert it to JSON so that we can extract it. So we extract it to JSON, get the particular data, and print it, else we print the error. Now that we have seen it, now let's test this out. Just a sec. Let's test this out in the what do you call our code pen for this. So let me save it first so that you can refer later if you want to. And API call them, right? Okay, so it was fetch. Let me get the URL from here. Like actually, let's get the entire thing from here. Like why to write and waste time for more. Okay, and let's bring out a console. Hmm. So what you can see is, let me print out the response part too, so that you can see like what's the rubbish in the response part comes, so that you can forwardly ignore it. So response object error undefined. What's this? Hmm. So you see here the API call failed because I did the code changes in between. So you can see the object error was returned. That is here, console.log error. The catch part does this. If you wanna like, and then this is the response part if you successfully execute it. And lastly we have the data part. So this what API does is it returns 10 users with different data types on it. So you can see like, I'll zoom it above. The first data ID1 and its particular data is returned, then ID2, then ID3. Like if you want to see changes in real time, like there is another one that is photos. Save it. Now this returns tons of photos. So let's just render. So you can see the data changed, right? And five, you can also see the length of the list of objects that came. That is, it has 5,000 objects in it, and each object has an album ID, title, URL, and thumbnail. Also, what is this data format firstly, and what is this JSON that we understood? Like if you know, you can write it in the chat, else I'll explain it just a moment later. Writing is not visible. Writing, which part writing? Just a sec. Writing is not visible. Just a sec, I'll zoom it. Hmm. Settings, text. There is a type to increase the text size or what? Is it visible now? Okay, it became too big. Hope it's visible now. I guess 704. By the way, it is all given in the PPT, so you can easily access it. We'll try to share the PPT as well. Else, what we'll do is we'll try to keep a demo video. We'll upload a demo project on it, so you can see how the changes are being done in real life. But it will take a little time. So for now, I guess this works. Like you can see the data here. How I should show it. Yeah, screen is too big now. So that shows how you can make an API call and fetch it. So async await, I will try to give it to you for research, because if I'll get in it, it will take a whole lot of time to explain that. Now, lastly, since we discussed JSON, let's keep it at a last topic and keep it with JSON only. So JSON is a standard used for object, data transfer across internet. Plain and simple, JSON is the way that most data is being transferred in the internet, being in APIs and anything. As you can see, as I showed you earlier also, this is what a JSON format is. It's similar to JSON objects like we discussed earlier. It is a combination of key value pairs, but it can also have a list. It's not going up. Yep. Hope it's visible now. This is what a JSON looks like. Key value pairs, combination of key value pairs, etc., etc., etc. Now we can access each and every of them value, and how we can do that, let's see in a while. Mm, since it is a light slide, let's present it up. Let's see with an example. Like we have an JSON object in the right side, so keep track of it because most of the data will come from there only. So firstly, that we have is employee ID, right? So assuming that obj is the variable in which this format is stored, right? Now we want to access the EMP ID, what you call employee ID. So EMP ID has a key named EMP ID. So obj.emp ID, the particular value you wanna fetch, use the same corresponding key with a dot in the object, and you will get it. Now, just in the second line, you can see that the object is nested inside another object, and the personal details is in itself an object that has name, gender, age, address. Now, assuming I want to access age, so similar to the object we did earlier, we take the object, go inside it, put the key value that is personal here, and since it is an object, we put another dot and access the what you call key in it, that is age, and the 28 value will be printed. Now you can nest it at any way possible, and assuming there is a loop, or a loop, I'm saying loop, sorry, my bad, a list inside it in the object, like what I can say, like I have to switch the screens again, just a sec. Assuming something like, let me zoom first. Let obj equal to list 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4, and then we have and string capital S, hello object inner uh, inner obj, and then we have again a list 1 comma 2 comma 3. Actually, let's keep it different values, 5 comma 6 comma 7. Now assuming I want to access the list value 2, try doing the stuff like, I hope it's clearly visible or not, I don't know. So the list has value 1 2 3, the keys name is list, and I want the value 2 to be printed. So what should I write in console.log? If anyone want to answer, you can write it in the chat, else I'll wait. Anyone who knows the answer can answer it though. So we have to print 2, right? So on which index 2 is present? Firstly, the 0 index, that is 1. Just a sec. In index 0, that is 1. Then we have index 1, that is 2. That is we want to fetch. So obj.list 1. Is my screen visible at all? Like I'm wondering. Console, come on, console, come up, come up, come up. Syntax error. No, okay, just a sec. Made a minor mistake. Should have commented out this. Till the time, what you can do is, since you have the object visible, what you can do is try to fetch the value 6 from inner object and try to remove 7 from the group. Okay, thanks. Assassin, you've done correctly actually. Nice, thanks. So as you can see, 2 is printed here. And now since we want to access console.log from object, then go to inner object, then access the list and go to print C. So firstly we'll go to the object, then give the key name, that is object, sorry for the miss thing, then the key name, that is inner onj, and since it's a list, so we want to access 7, assuming, so second value. Now what's the error? Okay, the 7 is printed. Now it doesn't matter how deeply it is listed. It doesn't matter how deeply the data is being listed here. Like, is chat visible? Just a sec. I guess now it will be visible. Okay. Is the image disturbing, like the results? Like, is the results visible behind the image? Okay, yeah. Now it's visible. Like the 2 that comes from the obj.list.1 and the 7 that comes from inner ong.2. This is the data. What do you call? This is the object. Now try accessing the string if you like and dropping in the answers like console.log. Feel free to write in the chat if you know. That is string. So now it's printing hello array again. That's the results are being hidden by the image. So this is how we can access the JavaScript JSON objects in our data. So for assuming you wanna access, like this is like PPT, let the PPT screen be visible. So assuming you wanna access the postal code of the JSON object, so you will go with obj dot address, no, dot personal dot address dot postal code, as mentioned here. You can see obj, that is our object, personal, that is the key name for this one. We are inside this object now. Then we have address, another key, and inside this, now inside this we have postal code key that gives the value 10038 that we wanted. Now this wraps up most of the things that are theoretical in what you call JavaScript and DOM manipulation. Any other doubts that you have, can post it in the chat so that I can remove it or solve it actually. Sorry, my bad, slip of tongue. Also, the what you call the code pens of it is available in the Notion link, and all of them are saved, so you can try to access it as many times as you like. Any issues? Anybody? Shoot in the chat. I'll try to answer.
Yeah, if you have any doubts related to anything, you can go ahead and ask. Uh,
I know it's a long session.
Also, the attendance form will be in the chat itself. You can just fill it up. If you have any doubts, you can contact. Otherwise, I think
Mm.
we'll get it over with. Uh, okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. You can contact us on our socials as well if you want any guidance or any doubts you may have further. And you can go through the summary as well in the Notion document. Uh, Both the code pens that Abhijit and I have done will be there. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
Mm. If you face an error, feel free to ping us on Discord. We'll be available there. I guess that's wraps up it up. Peace out.